Good evening, everybody.
Good evening,
Good evening,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Very good evening, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Just wait for another 2 minutes and then we can start. So, already 35 students are there. Maybe just wait for another 2 3 minutes. Let them join. Good evening, Daraksha. So, how was your any going back and looking at anything, or you just forgot everything? Went and had a good night's sleep. Hmm? Anyone who did some exercise? Shiva Sakti, Kavita, why maybe? What is this maybe?
No, ma'am, I asked what's the topic that we are discussing. So she responded that block 4 may be.
Okay. I'll announce, don't worry. You just wait for another 2 minutes. 43 people have already joined. And I think in another two, what is the time by now? Like 6:10. Okay. So today we are going to study something very serious. Yesterday's was quite an interesting thing about metaphysical poetry, about John Donne, about George Herbert, about Andrew Marvell, and a bit about the metaphysical age, features of metaphysical age. It was a very interesting age, right? So today we'll go to
Edmund
something.
Spencer.
Yes, yes,
Edmund
Manvi.
Spencer also.
Edmund Spencer, yeah, it was also good, but I have not gone into the details because I just touched upon Edmund Spencer's poems, and but detailed I went to metaphysical poetry, and I expect that you should give more emphasis on this metaphysical poetry and be prepared with at least one question. At least you can attempt one question from this age. So be very sure that you will attempt one question from this age. So be these are all interesting poets, and it's not very difficult for you to understand also. So go through that and be assured that you can answer one question. So that is how you go slowly and build up your answers, keeping in mind, because before you reach a destination, the roadmap is very important. The roadmap, examination is a very practical thing, and it has a time limit. So you may know many things. And I have seen this as when I was evaluating these MA papers, I've seen if it is short note, they give you short notes, they give you just like maybe 10. One numbering is 10. But students, they go on writing 3 pages, and at times it becomes, it irritates the evaluator. You are supposed to comprehend your answer, write in short. Okay. So if you write a very lengthy answer because you know everything, so you want to vomit it out, so it doesn't really have any create any impact on the evaluator. So you should know how to shorten your answer. You have to, I mean, the relevant points, you have to make it short and make a very comprehensive answer. So even if you write 2 pages, maybe you will get 4. And even if you write one stanza very meaningful, you may get 5. So students have a psychology that if they write very long answers, they'll get good marks. It doesn't go with that. It goes with the quality of your answer, the relevance of what you write and all. Because the more you write, the more becomes repetitive. If you go on writing more, you tend to repeat the same ideas, and the evaluator gets disgusted because it is supposed to be a short question and you go on writing everything about that, which doesn't help you in fetching good marks. So according to your marks, you should adjust your answer. Doesn't mean that you know everything, so you want to say everything to the evaluator. Evaluator knows everything. So this is not interested what Anjita will write or what Manvi will write, whether she knows it or not. They are not interested. So they are just characters for them, for him. So you have to make your answer very pinpointed, and if you're in a good handwriting, leaving margins, and if you do that, that has a good impression on the evaluator, because finally the appearance of everything counts. If the appearance is beautiful, people say, oh, it must be very good, even if it is not good, because there are many students who just write
Ma'am,
hindi film. Hindi, no, 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 ma'am, no. I'm just speaking because I want to get more students, and that is taking 2-3 minutes for that. And I thought that I can help you by telling you the how to write answers in the examination. So there are students who try to fool the teachers, because the students think that they're more intelligent than the teacher, but the teacher outsmarts the student because he's used to seeing such answers every time. So the students, what they do, they'll write one question very nicely, and the other question, they just go on repeating the questions, what is in the question paper, in a very good handwriting, thinking that perhaps, the teacher will not see, or maybe, give marks seeing his handwriting. So it also, they try to fool the teacher like that. So don't try to be very smart when you write answers. We have to be very thoughtful, and because you're all PG students, whatever you write has to be relevant. You're not +2 students, you're all PG students. So now we will go to the late Renaissance period. Okay, the late Renaissance. We started with the Renaissance, and now we'll go to the late Renaissance period. So what is this late Renaissance? Late Renaissance, as the meaning suggests, it is a later part of the Renaissance period, and it is signified by three movements. The three movements, one is the classical learning, where the classical learning again was revived, because the metaphysical age was a little different. And as I already told you, the invention of the printing press was there. So classical literature had got great influence on English literature. So the Reformation is another reason. Reformation, that is the upheaval. I had already told you, upheaval in the Christianity, corruption in churches, the political turmoil, and the interfaith conflict between Catholics and Protestants. And the other factor in the late Renaissance, these are the features I'm telling you, the late features. Another important factor was the emergence of England as an imperial power. Because, first of all, trade and commerce grew. England started establishing colonies in different new continents and new nations. And then, due to translation, there was a lot of intellectual movements, intellectual discourses, essays, and debates, and in clubhouses, a lot of discussions were also taking place. The rise of the middle class, I had already told you. And then the art and culture also flourished in England. So England started growing as an imperial power. And all this, due to this classical influences and all these intellectual movements taking place, it is also the age of enlightenment, because first of all, the science had, the lot of explorations, lot of inventions, lot of discoveries. So it had the impact on the nation, and all this also led to the rise and the importance of reason. And then there was a love for the pursuit of knowledge. So with this, in this late Renaissance, the essay also became very popular. There are different types of literature which came, like, the poetry was there, the essays were there, the pamphlets were there, and even the drama was there. And especially with the essay, the Francis Bacon, he was a very famous writer as an essayist. He became very popular because his essays are a very, what you can say, very pithy, very logical, and very argumentative. And so that was Bacon. I have to switch off this mobile. Yes. So there's a Jacobean theater also became very popular during this age. So against this age, one outstanding figure, an outstanding poet, literature was John Milton. So we are going to read Milton, and he was a intellectual, very intellectual person, and I'll tell about him. He had three stages of his life. One was the age, first stage was his idealism he had, and he was very much involved with the politics and religion of the state. And one thing he suffered is his blindness. Gradually, he became blind. But though he was blind, you cannot imagine that he wrote two seminal works, that is Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained, though he was blind. He was a voracious reader of Bible and classics and mythology. And in all his poems, you have a lot of references, in this, especially in the Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, lot of references to Greek mythology. And his language was very grandiloquent. Grandiloquent means very, very rich language, very lofty, very sublime, and it was very intellectual. So he had written a number of poems, and in your syllabus, you have three important poems. One is the Lycidas, and then El Allegro, and Il Penseroso, and some sonnets. Now, let me touch his poems. Just a minute. Milton was so outstanding a figure that his age is also called the Miltonic age, Milton's age, that is how. Open. Please don't raise your hands now if you have any problem. It's very urgent, then raise your hand, or else it is distracting me. You just switch off your mic and mute yourself. And at the end of my session, as I have always promised to talk to you, you can have your questions, you have your anything you doubts, and anything you can want to ask me, you can ask me. I will try to solve that. So this period of Milton was marked by the English Civil War, where the King Charles I. Yes, Anjita, don't have to. I know it. I know you don't have to answer. Don't have to indicate me. I am telling you. So you listen to me first. So that led to the execution of King Charles the First in 1649, and that is after that the period of restoration also followed, because when everything gets settled, then there is a period of restoration. And why the Civil War? The Civil War occurred because there was a fight, religious fight, political fight between the royalists and the Puritans. Royal means the court people, and the Puritans, or in a way you can say the Catholics and the Protestants. So he was, and Charles the First also, he was a very corrupt king, he was a very corrupt king, and he spent a lot of money on opulence, on extravagant things. That also made him very unpopular, and that is why he was also executed. So when Charles the First was executed, Charles the Second, he had gone on exile to France. He was invited to join, and he became the king in 1660. So this age of Milton was a pivotal time in English history, and with his he wrote his masterpiece Paradise Lost. He was a towering figure. He revolutionized English poetry. He revolutionized English poetry, and if you go to his about his life, he was a father was a prosperous merchant. He excelled in school. He was a very good scholar, and he went on to study privately in his 20s and 30s. Then he made a trip to Italy, studied in Florence, but again came back when there was outbreak of the civil war. And upon his return from Italy, he began planning an epic poem. He thought of writing a very long and majestic poem, the first ever to be written in English. But till that time, no one had written a great poem, epic. But these plans were delayed because of his marriage to Mary Powell. He married, and then they were also divorced after some time. So that, somehow, um, that fervor he had of writing, that was disturbed. And when the second civil war ended in 1648 and King Charles the throne executed, then Milton welcomed the new parliament and wrote pamphlets because he was also very politically involved. And then he was in a civil position for some time. Then he retired. After some time, he retired briefly to his house in Westminster because his eyesight was failing. He was gradually becoming blind. And in 1652, he became completely blind. So that is the general, you can say, about his life. And his early works, if you tell his early works, then he wrote, I already told you that he wrote Lycidas, and on the morning of Christ's nativity, Il Penseroso and Al Allegro, these two poems are there. And his skills of writing a narrative, philosophical poems, very lyrical, that was his, that were the features of his poems. And he believed that poetry has got a purpose. Poetry has got a very philosophical and religious purpose. He thought that through poetry, one can glorify God, promote religious values, enlighten readers, and help people to become better Christians. That was the objective of Milton. So Paradise Lost is not there, but it is generally, I can tell you that Paradise Lost is the story of Adam and Eve. Everyone must be knowing the story of Adam and Eve, but let me also repeat once again that when God created the world, he took 7 days. And the Sunday is called the Sabbath day because that was a rest day for the God. In 7 days, he had the complete creation. But after he created the world, he created Adam. So that man, Adam, male, he was roaming around in a beautiful world, pristine, pure, everything very serene, very nice. And so he was roaming around. But God realized that as the lonely being, he'll become he'll not enjoy nature, he'll not enjoy his life. So he thought of creating another creature, and he gave the name Eve. So how did he create? Because he had already created Adam. So creation is over. So how did he create Eve? So from the thigh bone of Adam, he created Eve. So that is the reason, and he gave the name Eve and also woman, because actually the meaning is we owe men, OWE. We owe men. So, see, God has created women as a weaker sex. It is God's purpose, God's creation. So, women was born out of the thigh bone of the male, that is Adam. So, Satan was a opponent of the God, Satan. So, when he saw this beautiful world of God, he started feeling very jealous. He thought, how can I spoil this creation of God? So, after creating Adam and Eve, God said that to Adam, he said that these are all beautiful apple trees, but never pluck an apple. You just enjoy everything, but don't eat the apple from that particular tree. Because God knew that Satan would be there in that tree. And that is called the tree of knowledge. Tree of worldly knowledge, not knowledge, worldly knowledge. But usually, we'll find the women get tempted very soon, not the men. So women, so when he saw those luscious apples, very attractive, red in colors, Eve said that they were going around naked. They didn't have any clothes to themselves, and they never realized their own body, that they had this features, that feature. They're just simply around because they're totally in the world of innocence. There's no consciousness. But when Eve prompted Adam that why can't we eat that apple? Let us eat that apple. He went on prompting. So Adam, to please Eve, took an apple and ate. Is my voice breaking?
No, ma'am.
No,
No,
ma'am,
ma'am.
it's perfectly all right.
No,
Okay.
ma'am. No,
So
ma'am.
he's when this Eve's prompted Adam to eat that apple, Adam was very reluctant. He said that God has admonished us not to eat that apple, so we should not. But still, she went on persisting, and that is how both ate that apple. So once they ate that apple, we have those the senses. I told you the seven scenes, the scenes of man related to the senses of man also. So suddenly, all those got awakened between Adam and Eve. They suddenly realized that their bodies are different, and there was a sort of attraction for each other. So all the deadly sins, which was not known to Adam because he was heavenly creature, he was beyond all this. Suddenly they became earthly characters. So what happened? That paradise they had to themselves, they started go, going down and down. That is where they lost the paradise. So this is the general story of that epic, and he was inspired by his Homer's Odyssey and Iliad and Virgil, and he wrote, in a very very rich language. You can say it's such as that is called the Miltonic language, Miltonic grandiloquent language. But though he was blind, Milton always used to recite verses each morning to one of his daughters, and their daughters used to write the poem for him. He dictated Paradise Lost to his daughters for several years, and it was published in 10 books. 10 books he wrote Paradise Lost. And then he revised and made it into 12. 12 books. Imagine a blind person writing 12 books. And again, he wrote Paradise Regained as a sequel to this great epic. It's Paradise Lost and Paradise Again. So, but we are not bothered because you don't have this Paradise Lost in your, you just know, you have to know the story of Paradise Lost as students of literature. That is the reason I told you. But we are to know the other poems of Milton. So, let me go to the other poems. So, first, let me touch one poem on the morning of Christ's nativity. So, that is also called the Nativity Ode. And he wrote the poem when only Milton was 21-year old. 21-year-old, he wrote this poem. And he wrote this poem to celebrate his 21st birthday. Here he speaks about the birth of Christ. The birth of Christ. He celebrates the birth and also celebrates his own entry into the adult world because he has become 21. So it is one of his great poems. It is written in iambic meter and he uses alliteration like winds, wonder, thirst, whist, swinging, and the lines are of varying, and it has got a music also. So this is how he wrote this first poem, and it is not a very significant poem, but it is his first poem. The second poem he wrote, also very famous, was Lycidas. And Milton was a great friend of, Edward King, a very good friend. And this friend of Milton, he got drowned in a shipwreck in 1637. So Milton was very, very fond of him, very close to him. So he wrote, it's like an, sort of elegy you can say about him, where he imagines himself and also his friend as shepherd boys, and he talks about immortality, he talks about mortality. These are the themes, and it's a
Uh,
pastoral. It is a
Ma'am, in his second poem, he's talking about immortality.
he talks in Lycidas.
Okay,
Lycidas, he talks about mortality and also immortality.
okay, ma'am.
Because these are the philosophical themes he has. And in this poem, there are a lot of classical allusions. It is a pastoral elegy because both the characters are in the form of shepherd boys, and you can say it is simple poem, looks very simple, but it is, you can say, this it's a one which is a mourns for his friend who died of the shipwreck. So in his guise as a shepherd, it's a tradition, of the pastoral elegy where the characters are shepherd boys. The speaker announces that he will pluck the flowers and mourn the death of his friend Lycidas. He gives a name. So Lycidas is the name Milton gives to his friend Edward King, who was drowned in the shipwreck. So he tells much how he and Lycidas shared and how they grew up together, how they tended to the flocks all day long, played the flute, they sang together, all these mythological characters, how they danced. But now Lycidas is gone and everything has changed in his life. Lycidas drowned. Then he asks nature, the deities, why? What happened to you? Why Lycidas got drowned? Please mute yourself, Drisha. Please mute yourself. Yes, he says, why Lycidas, when so many people were there, when the nature was there, the nature deities were there, how come he got drowned and why no one helped Edward, his friend? He says that even Orpheus, the mythological character, was a master of music, was a victim of drowning. And there also, one of the goddesses saved him. But in the case of Edward, why no one helped him? So he questions these Greek gods, Apollo, but no one can give the reason for the death. So pastoral imagery is very important in this poem, and he talks of the flowers, how to adorn the dead man's bier, that the corpse taken. But he says it is time to stop weeping. Why should I weep also? He questions, why should I weep? Because Lycidas is not dead. So through the power of Christ, he is now in the heavenly kingdom of love and immortality. So also I should not weep for him, I should not mourn for him. So this is a pastoral elegy. But very important poems you have are Allegro, El Allegro, and Il Penseroso. So this poem, that the twin poems, El Allegro and Il Penseroso, they are the twin poems. And they were written in 1631, and they were published in his anthology of poems. And both the poems are written in octosyllabic verse, or you can say line of verse with 8 syllables. So El Allegro, this is a very French word. What is the meaning? It is meaning means mirth, happiness. In El Allegro, the poet invokes means calls upon the goddess of mirth, of happiness, of joy, of laughter. And he desires to live with her. And even in the busy urban centers, he thinks that this Allegro, or the goddess of mirth, can fill people's lives with joy, happiness, and vitality. But if you go to the other poem, Il Penseroso, it is like pensiveness. Pensiveness means sorrow. He calls upon the goddess of melancholy. One is the goddess of mirth, and here is the goddess of melancholy, or the sadness, you can say. And he talks of solitude, quiet life, meditation. So both these poems are taken together, and generally you will find that there is a question, or there is a compare and contrast El Allegro and Il Penseroso. So I will go into little details so that it will help you. Yeah. First, Il Penseroso. Let me say, this poem, I said that these are the twin poems, a companion piece, and it was in 1646 collection. He brought it in the form in an anthology he published. So in Il Penseroso, Melton talks of contemplative reflection. Contemplative reflection. He talks of melancholy. He says melancholy is usually misunderstood, but melancholy is also helpful because in solitude, people start self-reflecting. There is the advancement of knowledge. There is meditation. So melancholy is not all that negative, He praises melancholy. So in the opening half of the poem, you will find that the poet dismisses the joyful experiences. He says that joyful experiences only brings momentary pleasure, very short pleasures that dies very soon, like friendship, lovers. These are all, these are all temporary things of life. Doesn't last long. But what lasts long is the character of melancholy, the goddess of melancholy. The poet argues that melancholy is always misunderstood. It is misunderstood as gloomy, sorrowful. No, it is not like that, he says. He says that melancholy has a wisdom. It is illuminating and also makes people radiant. So it is very pristine, as holy, like a nun robed in white. So there is a grandness to Milton's melancholy. And he says that they have two features. One is peace, the other is quiet. These are the two features of melancholy. One is peace, and the other one is muse of peace and muse of quiet. And it helps the speaker to contemplate, to self reflect, because this peace, quiet, contemplation, silence, these are all, associated features of melancholy. So he then describes he's walking through the forest at night, listening to the different sounds, and imagines that how he can spend an evening in a solitary cottage or a lonely tower. So you see how philosophical Milton is. And here also he alludes to the story of Orpheus, a shepherd from classical mythology, who tries to rescue his wife from the underworld by playing the flute. And when the morning comes, he says he requests melancholy, goddess of melancholy, to lead him to a shadowed part of the woods of the forest where he can dream and wake up to music. Perhaps wake up to the music of the church. The church, in church, they play the organ music. And finally, he imagines he can retire to study like a hermit and lead a life with melancholy. So he has, you can say, beautifully romanticized the word melancholy. No, melancholy is a very romantic word. When you say, generally people will say, oh, I'm sad, I'm not feeling, I'm low. But a student of literature will say, I feel very melancholic. So, that gives a very different sense. Melancholy, when you say it's melancholy, it's exactly not sadness. It is not a feeling of frustration, but it is something which gives you solitude, which makes you self reflect, which you go inward, you try to think inward, and when you try to think inward, then you start meditating. That is called melancholy. So it is a very rich word. And the other poem I was telling you is El Allegro, just the opposite. So El Allegro means happy, happy one. It is about mirth. That was melancholy, and this is mirth or happiness. So it is like a companion, and companions are necessary because you need to have a balance in life. If one is only melancholic, then life is not, there's not a balanced life. So in order to bring a harmony to life, there should be opposites. Only opposites brings harmony to one's life. So he says that you can appreciate melancholy if there is mirth. So mirth and melancholy, they go together. So he first begins his poem. He begins his poem by saying that now I banish melancholy. The night is gone, and now he prefers someone else. He calls mirth happiness. And how does my happiness is characterized? It is buxom, blithe, and debonair. Very spirited, very buoyant, very radiant. She is a goddess, fair and free. She is the daughter of Venus. And Venus is the symbol of love, the goddess of love. And also the daughter of Bacchus, the god of wine. So this makes this mirth or allegro, what you can say, that they are very characters, very radiant and debonair characters, makes one's happy. And it has got two characteristics. They have companions. Mirth has companions. When they come to join a party, they bring companions. What are the companions? Jest, Jest means when you have jokes, you when you're partying, then you have jest, happiness. And jollity, from to become jolly, jokes, smiles, sport. So these are the associated features of allegory. So laughter arrives, holding both his sides as they join a festive dance with sweet liberty. So the liberty is a sweet liberty. So this is about, so the speaker begs mirth to live with this goddess and her companions so that he can be free, he can enjoy, and he can live easily. So mirth brings wealth of pleasures from the natural world, like the lark, the bird, which soars up to the sky and taps at the speaker's window, saying good morning, good morrow. The cock crows in the barnyard. The sun rises over the hillocks green, and a hunting horn rings out through the woods, the jungle. So the simple people of the village, they get up and do. The plowman goes whistling, he works on the fields. The milkmaid sings as she works. The shepherd tells the tales as he watches the sheep. And a nearby cottage, you'll find two lovers meeting for a wholesome meal. Young lady preparing herself to meet her beloved. And so there is joy everywhere. It abounds, this world abounds with joy. So this is, you can say, allegory. And then the young people frolicking and dancing, and the spicy nut ale, the wine is freely flowing. People are gathered to hear the fairy tales of the goblin, and they all into the night they go to bed and fall asleep, and while the whispering winds sing a lullaby for them. So he says mirth only doesn't exist in the countryside, but also in the cities, in the urban places, where there are weddings, there are celebrations, there are parties, and there are pomp and feast and everything. So there's a lot of festivity going around in the urban places. So it's not that it is only confined to the village life. So both these poems you find, they depict the two aspects of human life. One, the pleasure, the other, the pain. Pain is also necessary, pleasure is also necessary, because pain makes you thoughtful, meditative, and pleasure brings joy to mankind. So it is a series of oppositions. It is opposed to each other, like day and night, mirth and melancholy, sensuousness and sensuality, classical and Christian. So all these you find, these are the opposites, and opposites are necessary because they complement one another. So the combination of the two is necessary. The juxtaposition of two is necessary. Then only life will become harmonious. That is what he believes. Who? Milton believes. So in order to enjoy life, one should also know what is called melancholy, because these are like light and darkness. They go together, go hand in hand. So in our life also, I think we should not feel depressed when one is going through a low phase, because there is always an other side to it. There is always on the other side to it. If there is a day, the night will come. If there is a night, the dawn would also arrive. That is how this is called the delight of life. That is how you enjoy life. So I have dealt with this poem, and in a very detailed way I have done it, so that um, it becomes easy for you to understand. Especially a question would definitely come, this, like, comparing Il Allegro and Il Penseroso. So, according to Milton, the human nature becomes complete or become whole when two sides are there and the two sides are blended beautifully. Then only it gives a complete picture of the world, which makes your world both bright and joyful. And at the same time, it also makes you dramatic and sad. And this all adds to your knowledge, it all adds to your intellect. Got it? Have you understood the poems? Yes? I should get your response.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
because Milton is little difficult, so I thought that so these are the three poems you can say. Lycidas, Il Penseroso, and Allegro. These are the three poems which you have to prepare for your examinations. And then we come to that's of course a boring age, the age of Dryden. So after this grand poetry, we come to the age of prose, Dryden. So the period from 1660 to 1700 is usually called the age of Dryden, John Dryden. So let me little tell you about the period. It is also called the Restoration period. There's a lot of changes in political and social fabric of the society. And I've already told you that Charles I, Charles II had already come. And the whole, French people, they are very proud because they say that we have taught the world manners. We have taught the world manners. So they're supposed to be very sophisticated, very elite, and they think that they are very, very stylish people, French people, because they're very fond of art, music, visual arts, all this. So this period saw the reign of three rulers. One was the execution of Edward, and then Charles I, and then Charles II. So it was very much influenced by the French. When there is influence of the French, naturally there will be a classical influence. And I already told you that the Great Plague had affected England in 1665. And also there was a great fire in 1666 where the whole city was ravaged by fire. And the entire city was rebuilt once again, London. So there was due to the French influence, a lot of test, literary change in the literary test of the people, literary test. And literature now appealed more to the head than to the heart. And sense, good sense, sensibility, sense, that was given more importance than emotion and imagination. Right? Society was more into the figure. So the Stuart dynasty, which was removed from the throne, and the Puritan age, which preceded the Restoration age, will find the the Stuart dynasty, which was removed from the throne and they were exiled. I told you that Charles I was beheaded, and again the Charles II, the son of Charles I, was brought back from France. He was exiled. He was in exile. So he brought with him the French manners, the French language, and you can say his court was famous for its licentiousness because he was a lover of art and literature. I tell you, a lover of art, music, painting, all this. So naturally, this was a period of great transition. And Dryden was the dominant literary figure influence of this age, and he wrote poems in a form that was called the heroic couplet, which was the standard form of English poetry. And he was famous for writing satire, religious pieces, compliments, prologues, plays, all this. Because I told you here, imagination was not given too much of importance, but what was given importance was sensibility about society. About, so when you talk about society, naturally there will be nothing to praise about the society, because it was a phase of transition, and all these things that happened affecting the society. So people had become very um, and satirical. So it's at times called the following. It is called that. It was also called the Augustan age, because during that time in Rome, Augustus Caesar was came to power after Julius Caesar, and he's the first Roman emperor. And Rome was famous during that age, and it was called the Classical Age. So that was the golden period of the Roman Empire or the Latin literature. So all these influenced English literature. So they started imitating the writers of this century, right? Started imitating the literary forms, themes of these Augustus writers, such as Virgil, Horace, and French writers, the Virgil, Horace, and even this, you can say, Ovid. All these, the classical writers started influencing them. So 18th century is also said they were known as the neoclassical age, because again the classical spirit was revived by restoring Charles II to the English throne. So now the emphasis was more on order, reason, restraint, common sense, and religious, political, philosophical conservatism, tradition. They wanted to create that. And they thought man was the most appropriate subject of art, not nature. No beauty, no friendship, but man. How man and manners. So they treated literature as a pragmatic weapon, intellectual, more intellectual than emotional. So this age had famous writers like Alexander Pope, Samuel Johnson, John Dryden, and you find there's a great link between this Restoration age and the Augustan age. Augustus age. Augustan age. I mean, there's a Restoration age and this called of Augustan age. So Dryden wrote comedies in a neoclassical spirit, lot of classical references. That is the reason Matthew Arnold says, he was a famous poet of the Victorian era. He says, 18th century is the age of reason and prose. So prose became very dominant. And
Ma'am, can you please repeat who said this? 18th century was the age of reason.
Matthew Arnold, he was a Victorian poet. So he had said that the 18th century is the age of prose and reason. So with intellectualism, it was the tone of temper of literature. So they talked of order, they talked of form, everything was in a heroic couplet, and everything was in a decorum, in a formal way they wrote, and they wrote more about facts, all these reasons. So that was more important. But earlier, you find that was very big, because Milton, though intellectual, he's at the same time you find a lot of emotion in his poem, and he refers more to the Bible, and he talks about philosophical things, but in a very different way he treated, like they. But here it is more of travelogues, romantic political allegories. If you take Jonathan Swift, you know that he had written that Gulliver's Travels. And what is about Gulliver's Travels again? In the late 18th century, he wrote
It
this.
was a satire.
It is a satire where he talks, the land of the Lilliput. I mean, on a very small thing, how people can fight. whether to break the egg this way or that way. That made them fight. How to break an egg. So that was a reason, a very paltry reason to fight. And there you find in the eighth land of the Lilliput that the Gulliver, the giant figure of Gulliver coming. So how they treat him, how they send arrows to him, is a very interesting. But it's a very symbolic novel. It has the meaning is something different, because there again they were Tories and these Whigs, how they are fighting against each other, how the society was fragmented. That was the main reason for writing that novel. So we find the predominance of satire is an important literary characteristic of that age. And when you find satire, also you find the rise of the novel. It came as, till now, novel was not very important. It was more of narrative, no more of lyric, more of poetry. But here you find, as it is the age of prose, you'll find satire, and then the novel as a literary genre came, and it became the literary expression, became the very important literary expression of the middle class, like Daniel Defoe, Richardson, Fielding. They were the famous novelists of this age. And I told you everything was written in the heroic couplet, where two lines of rhymed iambic in pentameter. Two lines of rhymed iambic pentameter was the important verse form of poetry. They only wrote in heroic couplet. They did not follow any other meter. And it was not emotion. It was more of a sentimental comedy was also became a dramatic form, where there was more of mocking, sentimental comedy. So these were the trends of that age. And periodical essays, like journalistic literature, you can say. That was a new literary form that emerged during the early part of the 18th century. And it was published in magazines, newspapers, journals at regular intervals. And these essays, the main purpose of the essay was to reflect the age, talk about the society, Augustine, and matters of contemporary interest, and not with matters of philosophy or morals, but more with that time, with whatever the currents, that political currents of the age, that was reflected. So there are many gazettes, periodical essays, number of gazettes like Athenian Gazette, and then Connoisseur, the Tatler, the Spectator. All these are the periodical essays that were published, and writers like Addison, Steele, Alexander Pope, they were contributing to this form. If you take the major poets, the major poets were Alexander Pope, Dr. Samuel Johnson, then you can say Thomas Gray, Oliver Goldsmith, William Cowper. These were the famous poets of this age. And the novelists were, Jonathan Swift, Daniel Defoe, Samuel Richardson, Henry Fielding, Smollett. These were the famous novelists of the. But two towering figures were Alexander Pope and Dryden, which you have in your syllabus. So if you take Dryden was all in one, very multifaceted person. He was a poet, he was a dramatist, he was a satirist, he was a translator, he is a miscellaneous writer, and you can say he's the chief founder of the English prose, great English critic, and you can say the representative writer of the Restoration age. He was a representative writer of the Restoration age. So he had written a very famous essay. I think, I don't know whether you have it, of dramatic poesy. And this was a famous essay he had written. And his important works were Absalom and Achitophel, Macflecknoe, All for Love. I think you have Macflecknoe in your syllabus. It is said that after Shakespeare, Dryden wrote the greatest heroic play of the century, and that was The Conquest of Granada. That was the play he had written. It's a tragic comedy. And also, he wrote another tragedy, Marriage a la Mode, French name, and he wrote poem All for Love. So these were the the writings of John Dryden, but we can only focus on Macflecknoe of John Dryden. Just give me 2 minutes. Let me drink some water and come. So the first literary satire is Macflecknoe. Macflecknoe, Macflecknoe, Macflecknoe. And it is one of the greatest mock heroic poems. Not a heroic poem, but someone making a fun of someone about his negative qualities. That is called not the heroic qualities, but the mock heroic. So he's an unnamed narrator, and that is Dryden. And this
Ma'am, could
poem
you
is,
please repeat
yes,
what is mock heroic? Could you please repeat what is mock heroic?
mock heroic. I mean, a heroic poem is, when someone celebrates the valor, the heroism, the gallantry of a person. That is called heroic, the qualities. But when it's a mock heroic, that means you talk about a hero, but it's very ironical that you start mocking at him. It doesn't have the heroic qualities, but you make him a mock hero. I mean, it is not exactly having the heroic qualities, but you make a fun of his heroic quality because he's exactly not a hero. He makes a sarcasm of the heroic quality. That is called a mock heroic poem. It appears to be very serious, but actually the meaning is to have a sarcasm of the hero. That is called a mock heroic poem. So it is told in the third person. It is narrated in the third person, and there is an unnamed narrator because Dryden doesn't want to reveal his name or himself as a poet. And at times he switches to the first person, and it is written in a heroic couplet. And the target of this poem, the main target, the hero whom he targets, is Thomas Shadwell. He's a contemporary of Dryden. Thomas Shadwell. So tension with Dryden began with the political crisis of 1678-79, when Shadwell, his contemporary, affiliated himself with the Whigs. I told you Whigs and Tories, they're the two parties, Whigs, and wrote a play. Shadwell wrote a play attacking the Anglican clergy. Attacking the Anglican clergy. So Shadwell succeeded Dryden as the poet laureate, and he followed Ben Jonson. He was another famous writer of his time. So here the major conflict, it is, he gives names. Richard Flecknoe. He gives the name Richard Flecknoe. It is the king of nonsense. And he looks for an heir, successor, to replace him. And he chooses the dullest of his sons, that is Thomas Shadwell MacFlecknoe. Got
Ma'am,
it?
Ben Jonson is the same who wrote Alchemist.
Yeah, alchemist who believed in the tragedy of who believed in the theory of humors. He said we have four humors in our body. So if the humors get disturbed, then our personality also changes. The body, like the bile, these are different humors, like we have in Ayurveda, different humors in our body. He says everything is based on humors. So he believed in the theory of humors. So he was a follower of Ben Jonson. So Richard Flecknoe is supposed to be the father of Shadwell, Thomas Shadwell. Richard Flecknoe named the king of nonsense, and is looking for an heir to replace him, and he chooses the dullest of all his sons, that is Thomas Shadwell. So this is the satire. So it reveals the conflict between the witty poets, the intellectual poets, and the dull poets. So he says MacFlecknoe he appears to be intellectual, but actually in real life, Shadwell is not, he's just an imitator. He doesn't have his own originality. That is how he attacked Shadwell, and he was his contemporary. So this was written, completed in 1679, and he circulated it very privately. Who? John Dryden. And only it was published later in 1682. So it is a direct attack on Thomas Shadwell, and he was, I told you, he was one of the Dryden's contemporaries. And he thought that Shadwell wrote second-rate poetry, an imitator. And he takes this MacFlecknoe, he positions Shadwell as the son of Richard Flecknoe, or the son of Flecknoe. And Flecknoe, there's a name, a French name, who was known for his mediocrity. So he gets that name for him. He gets the labels Shadwell as Flecknoe because he was an earlier poet who was famous for his mediocrity. So the poem shows the coronation of Shadwell, that is being honored, and he's the king of nonsensical verse. That is what he says. So he satirizes Thomas Shadwell as the heir. The poem adopts the tone of an epic, but actually it is a satire. And he says he doesn't write any true poetry, but it is all nonsensical poetry. The first stanza, you find it introduces the Flecknoe's desire, that the father Flecknoe to desire to find a successor to succeed him, to reign, and as he has governed for a long time, and so he chooses Shadwell, and he says he's the only perfect image for him so that he can choose him. And King Flecknoe, the father, praises, extols Shadwell's virtues, that he's saying that he never deviates into sense. So it is so satirical that he never deviates into sense. That means he talks of nonsense. He doesn't talk of sense at all. That is how it says. So Flecknoe builds up Shadwell's faults to heroic proportions. All the faults of Shadwell are beautifully described in heroic proportions. So the heroic depiction of Shadwell, he says he's a dunce. Dunce, Dunce. Dunce means one who is a fool. He's called a dunce. So this is all about Shadwell's life. And how does he spend his life? Among brothels, among brothel houses and polluted joys. So Sadwell comes of age as a poet and playwright in a nursery. That is, he says that he's a playwright of a nursery. And he's no great poet comes from such a place. So he says that his music is not of merit, but suburban music. Suburban means something which is not of the main city, suburban music. And he says that the royal procession of Sadwell to the city of London, that and when he's coronated and taken to the throne, is a second, when he writes, because he writes second-rate poetry. And it is like, his poetry is like, as if it is soiled by the toilet paper. And the last stanza comprises a speech by Flecknoe. He says that the Sadwell dominion may no end be known. So let the Sadwell continue. So when if much of this device so that is how he chooses Shadwell, the father Flecknoe, chooses his successor and chooses Shadwell as a new ruler over the Flecknoe's kingdom. So this is about Mac Flecknoe. It is a complete satire, and they had worked together. They had worked together, and they were contemporaries. But there is a professional life rivalry between Dryden and Shadwell, because he thought that he has no understanding. Shadwell has no understanding of wit. He doesn't have the merit, but he just imitates Ben Jonson. And so this is a mock heroic poem where the personal experience of Dryden is transformed into a literary criticism, because he talks of Shadwell. It is in a personal tone, but he doesn't reveal himself, but he satirizes his colleague and his professional contemporary. And so it is a very satiric poem, you can say. So it is the Mac Flecknoe, meaning is son, son. Mac means son of Flecknoe. That is called Flecknoe. And Flecknoe was an Irish Roman Catholic priest who had been satirized by Andrew Marvell. He was a Catholic priest who was satirized. So Dryden finds a beautiful connection between a bad poet and this Flecknoe. So this becomes a weapon for him, and actually it is a synonym for a dullard or a dunce, D-U-N-C-E. So the choice of words is very careful, and it has a mock heroic effect. He's not satirizing Ben Jonson, because Shadwell is imitating. He's an imitator. He's not original. That is what he wants to say, that he is not an original poet. But he has been given a lot of importance in his age, and he has been coronated, he has been honored. That is what makes him, Dryden. He attacks him, and in a personal, though it is a personal relationship which has been soured, and it's gone bad, but it takes the weapon of this satire and satirizes his friend and talks of him as a dullard poet, not an original poet. So this is about the age of Dryden. And so be prepared with this Mac Flecknoe. This is a very important. It will come as a short note, right? And the next I'll go is Alexander Pope. I'm not going to go into details about Alexander Pope. So he had written a very famous poem, The Rape of the Lock. Rape of the Lock. Lock means lock of hair. Rape of the Lock. And the another poem he had written was Dunciad. Again, Dunciad, Dunciad. Dunciad means fools. And an essay on man. He had written an essay on man. So he had written a number of topics of religious and philosophical topics. But again, he is very famous for his satirical work. The Rape of the Lock, it is a mock, again, is a mock heroic poem where he talks about how a young woman's hair has been stolen, and there is a big feud, there is a big fight over that, about that hair which has been stolen from that lady. And the Dunciad is another poem where he celebrates the human agents, human agent of God, who will bring ruin to Great Britain. He'll not try to help Great Britain, but will bring ruin, because they're all dullards, they're all dunces, they don't have any wit, they don't have any brain. And so Pope was an English poet, an essayist, a satirist, all three in one. And his writing is very formal, very formal. He uses the heroic couplets, a lot of classical allusions in his poems. And there are famous quotes of Pope. I have to, these quotes are very famous. I think you must be knowing. A little learning is a dangerous thing.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a very famous quote, and this is by Alexander Pope. And then he also writes, know then thyself, presume not God to scan. The proper study of mankind is man. Know then thyself, presume not God to scan. The proper study of mankind is man.
Yes, ma'am. I have heard of it.
Yeah, it's a very famous quote. And another is, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. I mean, where the angel will not go, the fools they go. Then another famous quote of Alexander Pope is, to err is human, to forgive divine.
Divine.
Divine. So this is a very famous quote again. Then another quote, which is very famous, is, blessed is he who expects nothing, for he shall never be disappointed. So you see how formal he writes in his poems. And these are the philosophical, because he was very philosophical at one side, and on the other side also he was very mock heroic. And he wrote essays, he wrote poems, and he wrote in a formal way, that is the heroic couplet. And he reflected his age, and he talks about man, because man was the center of everything in restoration age. He talks about man and society, relationship of man and society. So after this age, again you will find another contrast, that will be the romantic age, where everything is imagination. So you find how the cycle is changing. If you just go back, you just look very closely and review the literature, you'll find it is like a wave. You find the classical age, again there one is a reason, the next will be emotion, then again it will be something else, again it will be imagination. And what is now the age of realism? There is no imagination now, nothing, no imagination. People don't write also letter, don't imagine to write a letter also. I don't think anyone writes a letter these days.
Everybody does a email.
Do you write letters? I don't think people write letter. They've forgotten how to write letters.
Everybody writes email.
Everybody writes mails, and that in a broken English. So everyone has forgotten the texture, the structure, and the flavor of good English. So it is all broken English. What you write, a peon will write, an illiterate fellow also writes like that. So there is no difference between your mail and his mail. Am I right or wrong? Tell me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But earlier when they were writing good letters, good and very nice letters, you feel like reading, especially when Nehru writes letters to his daughter. You go on reading. Lot of things coming out of that letter. And I will advise you, there is John Keats, his love letters. You should know how to write a love letter. The letters of John Keats of letter. There is a book available, John Keats's letters, letters of John Keats, where he writes love letters to Fanny Brawn. It is not a very cheap letter. It is not very cheap or trash. It's something very dignified, very noble, very philosophical, very thoughtful. A lot of things coming out of that. But yes, everyone has started forgetting books. Everyone wants to be just have some quickies, something which you can immediately, you can just read, and or you just go to the Google, get something and get it. So it is all half baked. The knowledge nowadays is half baked. Like we have a food which is ready made, half done. You just come and put it in the microwave and just you have it. There's no proper cooking. There's no earlier how they used to do it. All these things have gone. It's all in oblivion nowadays. Similarly, nowadays the reading part of it, the writing part of it is something. There's no thinking going into it. You when I tell you to imagine, I think people cannot do that. Now they've stopped imagining. There's no imagination nowadays. If I tell you just imagine and write about a rainbow, I don't think anyone can do that because no one has seen a rainbow
Ma'am,
nowadays.
John Keat also wrote A Thing of Beauty is a Joy Forever.
No, that he wrote. But when I'm talking about you people, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about, but as students of literature, how many people you get up in the morning and admire a rainbow or admire a cloud? There's no time to look up at the sky because you all get up by 11 o'clock in the morning. So hardly you will
Not
see,
me, ma'am.
yeah, hardly you see the sun rising or the moon rising. There may be exceptions like Smriti, she says no, ma'am. So it may be one or two exceptions, but the general, you will find the general generation. I am not blaming you people, but I'm talking about this generation where, okay, Chaitali says that I get up and wake up at 5 o'clock. It is good, but these are exceptions. But if you take the general trend of the people nowadays, they wake up till midnight, but they don't burn the midnight oil, as we say, midnight oil. They're more into parties, more into all this, movies and all this. But burning the midnight oil means to read, to toil hard. But that part is gone. So now it is more into midnight, enjoying, and then getting up 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and then rushing to the college, coming back, and there's no time to go for self study. Whatever is available nowadays, you have a multiple teacher system. One is the donkey teacher in the classroom, the other is the Google teacher you have, third is the guide teacher you have, and the fourth is, there are multiple teachers. So you don't depend on only one teacher nowadays. So multiple teachers, that makes you very confused, right? So teacher is the one who gives you, the right teacher will give you such a thing where whatever you have read or studied has a lasting impression in your mind. That is the, you can say, the definition of a good teacher. Okay, so today I think I cannot progress further. I have gone much, and this Dryden and Pope, they are very heavy writers, especially Milton. So lot of exercise I had to do for making you understand. So today I can stop here. If you have any questions, you please ask.
Ma'am, kindly join us in the WhatsApp group or give us notes, some notes, because I was not.
Tell me who is the mail ID. Tell me, give me the mail ID. Where is the mail ID?
Okay, ma'am, I'm
Ma'am,
writing.
if you can share the notes till now, that would be great help so that we can carry out with.
But how can I? This is the promisewords@gmail.com.
Yes, ma'am.
Promisewords@gmail.com. No,
Zero, zero.
just once more. You can just see the chat. Let me see the.
Promise word zero at the rate gmail.com.
Wait.
But promise, are you with us? July 2024 group. Will you be able to share us the notes which ma'am will give you?
Yeah, yeah, I will be able to share you with the notes.
But I'm not there in that group, so how can I reach with the notes then?
You can drop your phone number in the chat box. Manvi will add you to the group in July 2024.
Okay.
Whosoever is left in adding to the group, just simply drop your phone number in the chat box. Manvi will add you.
Ma'am, a humble request if you can have your number as well. We'll not pester you, I promise.
So,
It's just
what
for
is the promise? The promise is very verbal.
it will be very judiciously use the number.
Everyone will promise me like this, but
Okay, ma'am, I'll earn the number. I'll
no,
wait.
I don't mind to give. But it is getting too much because I'm into
I
too
understand.
many groups. No, so I'm getting lot of this whole day will be spent.
Ma'am, you can send me the mail. I will share it on the WhatsApp group
Okay,
for everyone.
okay, okay. You can. That is the. I'm sending the mail ID. You can
See,
send me.
there are so many numbers popping out. By the time you add everything and do it, then it will take a tedious task, I think.
Manvi, can you just share the link here where we
Because
are?
if we close this class, all the numbers you may not get it.
That's what
You have
instead
to
of
write
sharing
it
the number,
I'm
quickly
I'm
or
sending. I'm
anything.
sending my mail ID. Okay.
okay, ma'am.
Okay. You got it.
And take screenshot of the screen.
You can write down. You can write down or take a screenshot. I've now given my number. I mean my mail ID. Did you see that? nandacinema.1959 at gmail.
Yes, ma'am, noted, ma'am.
Noted, ma'am.
Okay. So you just send,
Should we mail you?
send me that what is that promise? I forgot what is the promise words.
Word zero
I mean,
at the rate
why are
gmail
you
dot.
writing this promise words? It is something where it doesn't have any name. It is just promise. It's a very
I'll
new.
do one thing, ma'am.
My name is.
Just everyone, 1 second. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Ma'am, Samriddhi, this side. I'll do one thing. I'll send you a mail on the mail ID you have shared. So my
Huh.
mail ID has Samriddhi written on it. So it'll be pretty clear. You share the notes with me. I'll share it with everyone.
Okay,
And
okay.
I'll
Till
share the link
whatever
of our.
till today, whatever notes I have done, but the notes is not meant for. Let me tell you, the notes is not meant for you. I have done it for my knowledge, right? So whatever notes I have done for me, I'll send it to you. But you cannot say these are all the packed answers for you. Not that. See, these are the notes which I had made for me,
Okay.
and of course they have some relevant feature. You can get something, but I'm sending that. Whatever
Sure.
I have, I'm sending that. Okay. So you send me your mail ID to my mail, and then I can send you.
Right away, ma'am. After, as soon as the class is over, I'll send you a mail.
And if you have any questions, now ask me. Or you have understood everything. How are you finding my lecture?
Very interesting.
You're finding.
Fabulous, ma'am. You're
It is.
making a very intimidating subject so interesting.
Yeah, that is a very difficult part of it to make something dull interesting.
Ma'am, it is really very interesting, but the time is too less. If just the only worry is, will we be able to score as much, how much to write, and those are the things
but
that
but
keep.
I am at the same time I am giving you tips, so that I'm telling you what is important for the short note, what is important for this long note, what is the main thing you have to study from this age, that age. So till now I can say try to avoid Edmund Spencer, try to focus on the metaphysical age, right? Try to focus on Milton if you can, Il Penseroso and Allegro it comes, Miltonic age, and John Dryden's Macfleckno comes as a short note that you can do that, but try to avoid Alexander Pope because again he's a difficult writer. And then you will come next stage will come the Romantic age, then the Victorian age, then the modern age. All the three four ages are there, so you have to deal with that, where you find Coleridge, you find Wordsworth, you find Keats, you find Byron, you find Shelley. All these characters will come. And
Could you
then
please repeat that, ma'am? What to leave?
yes, yes.
Ma'am, could you please repeat which poets to leave, like Spencer you mentioned, and
No,
who
no, I'm
else?
not telling you to leave. That is the wrong word. I'm
Oh,
not telling
sorry.
you.
Okay, okay.
No,
Not to
no.
pay
You
too
can
much
give,
attention
you
to
can
it.
give less importance to. That will be the right word.
Okay, thanks, ma'am.
Because
Thank
as
you.
a teacher, I cannot say you link. You
Of
give
course.
me.
I
But
agree.
say importance is to Chaucer, non-Priestess Tale, I have already told you, okay, or about the prologue of the Canterbury Tales that can come. And the second is Edmund Spenser. You can in a way prothalamion and
Ma'am,
epithalamion.
I have sent you the mail.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I have sent you the mail.
Okay, so prothalamion and epithalamion, these are the two poems where you have made the contrast. That is important. Then you can focus deeply on this metaphysical age. Read all the poems, especially focus on John Donne. And then after that, you are coming to this Restoration age where you are finding this, Miltonic age, where Milton, again, Allegro and Il Pensiero. So these are the two poems I have discussed. These are important poems. Even Lycidas is an important poem where he talks about the death of his friend. So these are the three important poems which you can focus, and mostly it comes as a either a long question may come on Il Penseroso and Allegro in a compare the twin poems, or it may come as like Lycidas as a short poem, short note. Then after that, you are coming to the Restoration age, that is the age of Dryden, where Macflickno is a mock poem, mock heroic poem, and usually it comes as, if it is coming as a short note, better you write that. But for long questions, you have other ages. You have not touched those age till now. You can touch, like the Romantic age is there, then the Victorian age is there, then the modern age is there. W.B. Yeats is there, T.S. Eliot is there. So many great poets are there. So you have number of poets where you can also shift your attention to those poets. So for short questions, you can tick all these whatever I have told you, right? So you
Ma'am,
can
I have written my full name also.
which one?
Ma'am, I have written my full name also.
Okay. I can.
Ma'am, just one more question. Amongst the modern poets, which ones do you think are important?
No, no,
Because
we
it
are,
is
I have
not
not touched.
possible
No,
to do all.
no, no, Priti, you are hurriedly going. You are now in the dried age of Dryden. Why are you jumping to the modern age? So don't make a shortcut. You have to go step by step, step by step. Now, if I tell you in 5 sentences till now, can you tell me the development of the literary ages? You started with whom, started where, and how you came? Just give me. I want to hear someone from someone in a very short way. Not all details, but generally, what was first you read, then which age followed, which age followed. Just tell me that. So that you have a fair idea of the age. I told you the age is very important. Any one of
Uh,
you?
Ma'am, first we started with the medieval, where there was Chaucer,
Hmm.
and we followed it up with the Renaissance age, where we had Spencer.
Hmm.
Then come the metaphysical poets. I think our blocks are arranged in that way.
Yeah, no, it is age wise. Yes,
They are age wise. So then comes the metaphysical poets,
yes.
and that is I don't know which age that is, the age of, because they call it the age of Donne, or the father of
The metaphysical
metaphysical.
poets, the metaphysical age, you can say the metaphysical poets generally
Yes.
we call that. Yeah. Then,
Then we follow it up with the age of Dryden,
yeah,
or the
the late Renaissance,
neoclassicism,
neoclassical age, restoration age,
neoclassical age.
or the restoration age.
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm.
And after that, we have
Now, before that, we had Miltonic age. After that, it comes the restoration age. Okay, the late Renaissance. Late
yes.
Renaissance is the Miltonic age, and then after that follows the restoration age of Pope and Dryden. But till that time, till Milton, there was no sarcasm. There's no criticism, no satire, no irony. Till that, it was more of intellectual and lyric, and talk of philosophy, talk of these things. But for the first time, there is a total change, shift of tone, a paradigm shift, you can say, where suddenly man becomes the center of the society, and there is more of criticism about this, about that, about society, about manners, because it was the age of prose, as I told you. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Now we'll be doing the romantic poets tomorrow.
Then tomorrow we have to, there'll be a little the small gap is there. Then we go to focus more on the romantic poets, especially Wordsworth. You have Prelude, These are very long poems. I think I today is my third class. No, today is my third class. So tomorrow I have. I was given, I think, 8 classes, out of which one I had to miss because I was told in the last minute. So I didn't. I couldn't do that. So I have 7 classes with you, and we have 10 blocks. 7 classes, 10 blocks. So I am trying to, so that I don't miss any block. At least you have a holistically, you have a view of the entire periods. That is what. And I'm focusing more on important poets because there's so many poets. If I go on slowly, it will take me 1 month, 2 months, which is not possible. They have given me limited number of classes, so I cannot ask for more also. So I have to complete within that, and you are supposed to read simultaneously. That is the purpose of counseling, because it is not a classroom teaching that you come totally empty headed and the teacher goes on stuffing you with all his ideas. So already you is supposed to read something and come, so that you are familiar with what I'm going to teach. That is the main purpose of a counseling, because there's a difference between taking counseling class and a classroom teaching. Right? So this is called academic counseling. So I'm supposed to counsel. I'm supposed to, like an umpire, supposed to tell you what to read, what not to read, how to go ahead, how to answer the questions. It will be like an advice to you and also to deal. But I am not going line by line, because the blocks have been prepared in such a way, the units have been prepared in such a way that you can read to yourself. It is a self study, because you are all isolated learners. You not go together in a class, you huddle together and sit down and listen to the teacher and come back. You are from different places, so you are only getting connected through this technical device, through this platform. You're getting connected, but after that again you are a solitary. You can say you have to read in your own solitude, as the word says. So you are all isolated learners. So it would be better for you if you have, because this gives you an opportunity to connect yourself with your friends. So I would advise you that have a connection with your age, with your peer group, so that whatever like she has prepared, she can share with you. Whatever you have prepared, you can share it with her, because after this 8 classes, I am a lost character for you.
Don't say that, ma'am.
Yes.
Please don't say that.
I am
We do
lost character.
understand that. Ma'am, we do understand that.
Yeah, then after that maybe you can send me a mail. Of course I can help you, but I'm not going to interact with you, because there's no opportunity for me to interact. Even you'd love to, I cannot do that. So at times you can send me some stray mail or some advice, I can give you that. I don't mind. As a teacher, I definitely I'll do that, but I cannot be in regular touch with you. I don't know you personally. I have not. I just see some faces. At times you appear, you pop up, and I see your face, you see my face, and but that is the only connection we have. So but still, it is a connection. It is a connection, though it is we are distantly located, but still there is a connection. I am the teacher, you are my student. So that is the connection I have with you. Okay. So
Ma'am, in case, sorry to interrupt, in case I don't get a chance to talk to you again because you're making things very grim by saying it's very few classes left, I don't want to miss this opportunity to. It was a pleasure learning from you.
no, see, I am nobody to say that how many classes I have to take.
Yes.
They decide and give me the classes, and accordingly I have to adjust, and according to the importance of the subject I am going, because I don't want the students can miss out something or would miss out something in the examination. So that I gave at least try my best, because when I'm telling you I am digesting so many things and I'm giving you very less. For me it is a difficult exercise, because I'm grasping the entire thing, but when I say it is within 2 hours I have to say so many things. It is a very difficult thing. It is a very difficult thing, so I cannot say each and everything to you. Though I know, though I love to say, I cannot do that. So I have
And
my limitation.
I'm just
Right.
truly grateful. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So now we can wind up. You can go and
Yes,
sleep.
ma'am. Thank you
And
so much,
yeah,
ma'am.
but try to go
Thank
back.
you,
When you
ma'am.
go back, try to just mentally you revise what all you have read. Mentally you make a note of it, all this. Don't think that this is gone means forgotten. Don't. And one more thing I would like to advise you. One thing I would always tell you, because I, as I'm evaluating, I find the spellings of the characters, the spelling of the authors, of the spelling of the characters, it's something very grotesque. At times, it's weird, you can say. You know, for example, if it's Shadwell, you will say Saidwale suddenly, and you'll find one character of, so for example, if you're talking about Mac Fleck, no, you bring a character from Alexander Pope. That is a problem. They are not able to relate. For I found someone writing very beautifully, but that was an analysis of Robert Frost's poem, but he has misunderstood, and instead of writing this Robert Frost poem, he writes something else, taking it to be Robert Frost poem, but the answer is good, but it is not Robert Frost poem. That means these are all English names, I tell you. It is not Rama, Sita, Arti, Lakshman, all this that you remember. So these are very difficult names. So I would request all of you, when you read or when you write, take down the notes, write the names 2, 3 times. For example, if you're writing Shadwell, that name is very unfamiliar name. I just tell you and you listen to me. But when you write in the examination hall, it comes out to be something else. For example, I don't know whether you have this histoprin in American, the drama, histoprin. They write made funny names of this histoprin. Someone is the historical thing, sometimes something, they are not at all related to histoprin at all. And the author also becomes different. If it is Nathaniel Hawthorne, they will write that it is by, some other author. That means they cannot relate the author to the character or to the subject. So you have to be very clear about the names, of the author, the characters, because at times, you go on changing, alternating the characters. If you write about Wordsworth, you are writing about Coleridge. You have forgotten that it is not Wordsworth, it is Coleridge's character. So I've told you about write about Wordsworth's character, you write about Coleridge character. You said that Solitary Reaper, you tell that it is written by Coleridge. That also is happening. That means that reading is not very intense, so you have to make an intense reading in a diary. I'll tell you one thing, because I have little time with you. I'll tell you one thing my teacher had told me. So as my teacher had told me, I thought I can tell you, and this can also go to the next generation. My madam had told me that whatever you read, it may be a novel, it may be a good piece of poem, whatever you read, always maintain a diary. Put down the date, write down the name of whatever you have read. And if that is a novel, just write the names of the characters, the important characters of the novel, and the summary, where is the gist of the novel, in maybe in one paragraph. It helped me a lot, because when you read number of books, it is like an ocean. Literature is like an ocean. So when you read number of books and suddenly, someone asks me, oh, do you know the character of this? I'm not able to relate. I'm not able to relate, because I have read it. Yes, I have read it. But I cannot relate which novel, from where I got it. So that, I made a habit. So when I read, say we have a discussion, and they say, oh, you Maggie Tulliver, have you read that? Then I suddenly remember, oh, Maggie Tulliver, where I read it. And then I remember, oh, that is Emily Bronte's this Mill on the Floss. That is a novel. I've read it. No, then, you just go back. So, and you will feel very happy. Maybe after 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, or when you're married, when you have children, you show the diary to him or to her and say that this is what I have read till now. No, it's a very good habit, because 100% you will never remember the names. If you remember the name of the novel, you will forget the characters. So if you just write one page, read the novel, names of the characters, by whom it is written, write down the date, and the small, very in short, in just a paragraph, you can say, what is the gist of the novel, the summary. It will be of great help when you face interviews. You are appearing for the civil services, or you are appearing for some other examination, where oh, you are a student of literature. Have you read this? Have you read that? Have you done this? They'll ask you multiple questions. That time, it helps you. You just go, flip those pages, and remember, oh, I had it. Achha, during the time of my first year, I read this. Oh, during my period of graduation, I read this. During my page of PG, I read this. In my summer vacation, I read this. Suddenly you start remembering all this. So that is a very good habit, and you should inculcate. If you have not done, bring a beautiful diary. You must be getting it, and the spiral thing, spiral diary, and you put down the date, put your signature in a good handwriting. You start writing. Okay. So this will be my advice to you as a teacher. Nothing to do with your poems or nothing to do with your British poetry, but that is a general observation which I have and my own experience I have gone through. So I thought I can share it with you. If you find it is useful, you can follow it. If you don't find it is useful, you can discard it. It is up to you.
I think it's a great advice, ma'am, because the other day only I finished one novel. I'm afraid to start another because already the characters are mixing up.
Yeah, you mix characters because they're not. When you read a lot, after sometimes there's a human tendency we forget because new things will coming. New things will come, and especially when you are after some time you're in a job or sometimes you are somewhere. There may be some discussion. For example, oh, have you read this novel? Then yes, I've read this, but that will not strike you. That will never strike you. But if you just write it and you just go back once again and oh, this is what I've really read it. Oh, these are the characters. It gives you immense pleasure that you have made a note of that, whatever you have written. And another thing I can tell you is to how to improve one's vocabulary. Because this for that, people take classes, how to improve English, how to improve communicative English, and you find lots of lectures, that happening. Once one of my students, he was a very bright student and he was a science student, and he never used to complete the answers in any examination. There are 5 questions and he can only write 3 questions, and they're wonderful answers. So he came once to me and told me, madam, I'm not able to complete my answers because I'm a science student and I'm not used to writing hurriedly. So how can you help me, madam? Then I told him that whatever I say, will you follow it honestly? Then I'll tell you. He says, yes, I'll follow you honestly. Then I said that whenever any lecturer is coming or any teacher is coming for lecturing in your class, don't look at the teacher. You try to match your speed with the teacher's speed. Whatever the teacher says, go on writing fast. Your fingers will pain, but try to follow whatever. He may talk sham, he may talk nonsense. You don't have to write you don't have to judge what he's teaching. But you just try to match your speed with the teacher's speed. And you won't imagine it worked wonders. And after some in this examination, I observed that he has completed 5 questions. I said, how come you completed 5 questions this time? He said, ma'am, my habit of writing fast only came when you told me that in any class, let it be economics, let it be sociology, let it be English, let it be geography, whatever class, any teacher comes, the moment he starts telling you, start writing. Try to match your speed with the teacher's speed. Then, it will help you. So that is how he started writing, very fast. So I would also advise you the same thing. If you're a slow writer, you can do that. That helps you. Because these tips, no one can tell you. These tips only comes from a teacher. You'll not find it in any book. You'll not find it in any Google, nothing. You'll only find from the experience of what a teacher has told you. And these are very helpful tips for you. Okay. So now we end, and good night to all of you. And thank you.
Good night, ma'am.
So much, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you for the
Thank you so
wonderful
much,
class,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Any
Thank you,
question?
ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Any
Ma'am, bye.
Okay, thank you.
Next
Okay.
class is tomorrow, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Tomorrow is my class, I think.
Okay, see you,
Okay.
ma'am. Good night.
Same
Okay.
time, right,
Good.
ma'am? 6 to 8?
Same time, 6 to 8, 6 to 8. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then wind up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such treasure of advices.